So our last segment in today's agenda will focus on deliberative technology, new directions, and looking at the CrowdSmart platform. So we will hear from Dr. Lisa Schirch, who obviously launched our agenda earlier today. We will also hear from Victoria Stanski, who is with Common Good AI. They're going to delve into lessons learned to date, emerging frameworks in the direction of the deliberative technology field. Yeah. So I'm going to hand it over to Lisa. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I appreciate having the last bit of time here of the day. I will try to be very brief in just introducing people to the idea of deliberative tech, because I know a lot of people still don't know what it is and how it's different really from social media in some pretty profound ways. So I'm just going to give a brief introduction and then pass it over to my colleague Vic, who will give you a beautiful demo of CrowdSmart, which is one of the newest deliberative tech platforms. I'm doubting very many of you have seen it before. So just to quickly here share a few slides. We have so the Council on Tech and Social Cohesion has a number of hubs, and this hub is really focused on a collaborative research project that I'll explain quickly. And then we have monthly meetings where we look at different platforms. And Vic just gave us a longer tour on Monday of this week. But the idea is deliberative tech is a form of pro-social tech. If you were at my earlier presentation, you know, I rank it up near the top. It doesn't mean that it's a niche area, though, because I would really love to see deliberative tech be integrated into all the major platforms. Just like Facebook has Facebook Marketplace, which is structured a little bit differently and has a different design. I feel like anytime there's a policy issue, there's a difficult conflict, conversations should be geared toward a different tab on Facebook or LinkedIn or wherever, where you have a new set of affordances and designs that would really encourage you to have productive problem-solving conversations. And so that's my goal, really 5 years down the road. But right now we're just sort of learning about deliberative tech. And quickly, I just want to say deliberative tech was designed to support democracy. And so I sort of make the bridge to peace building by saying peace building is democracy in polarized contexts. So this idea of collective intelligence is really the foundation idea or concept. This is really the mathematics of democracy, that 100 minds are more powerful than 5 minds. If you want to read a great book about it, here's a site from Jeff Mulgan at Harvard on how collective intelligence can change our world and solve more problems by involving more people, this democratic participation. And really, diversity or pluralism is the natural order. We know that the environment is richer and healthier when there is a diverse ecology. Our gut microbiome is, identities diversity really enhances humanity, and idea diversity, like hearing a lot of different experiences and opinions and ideas. This is the way we find solutions. So collective intelligence is really seeing diversity as an asset. People with different life experiences and beliefs make better decisions when we think together. So that's the kind of the fundamental idea. Deliberative tech sort of puts together different kinds of intelligence then. So we traditionally have, you know, we elect experts and representatives who make decisions for us, but that kind of representative democracy doesn't need to exist in its form. We have the ability now to use platforms to collect intelligence from people. So this idea of collective intelligence is bringing in the life experiences of thousands or millions of people and enhancing it by synthesizing those diverse inputs with artificial intelligence. So I'm going to briefly go through a couple of these concepts. Deliberative tech then is really looking at a large-scale exchange of views between the public. It can be either at the same time or structured asynchronously at different times, and it's iterative. And I think that's what makes it specifically deliberative. So it's not like you're just gathering people for once, but you're inviting people back for a series of dialogues because it's this iteration where people actually change their mind and really listen deeply to others. An example of this, which is not showing up on this slide format, is the Alliance for Middle East Peace. To go back to Israel and Palestine, this is an AI program that is happening really right now. It's been happening for the last year and a half. It started with 100 peacebuilding organizations using a platform called Remesh, which is one of the deliberative tech platforms, and using AI to sort of synthesize all of the inputs. Let me just jump here to say, there were different dialogue cycles, and in this case, they were with different groups of people, particularly Israeli Jews, Palestinians from the West Bank and Gaza, Palestinian citizens of Israel, and then all sides together. What makes it unique from social media or a traditional survey is that you're having a conversation just focused on one topic. You're focusing or featuring ideas and not people's identities. So there's no like reply button where you see who you're responding to. You're really sort of allowing the ideas to speak for themselves on most platforms. Everyone is participating in setting the agenda. So whereas a surveyist or a pollster comes up with the questions, here everybody is setting the agenda together. This type of deliberative tech is being used a lot in citizens' assemblies, also with civil society consultations, participatory budget for public input in peace processes, to even govern AI. We're using it in social movement organizing. One of the platforms, Polis, was built in response to the Occupy movement, and then for future planning. Quickly, there's sort of different algorithms on deliberative tech as separate from social media. And these bridging algorithms, we call them, find areas of common ground, shared values, and agreements. And so there are different deliberative technologies, and all of them are structured a little bit differently. So I'm going to pass it over soon to CrowdSmart so you can see how that is. But there's some that really focus on humanizing, where you do get to see people's faces. Others are focused on fact building, like we just heard, sense making, decision making, etc. And many of them are enhanced with AI. So in this Alliance for Middle East Peace, there was sort of AI. This is like a diagram of the deliberation process, and you're using AI to synthesize, to identify bridging statements. You're using it at several points along the way. And just a caution, AI is only as ethical and intelligent as its data set. And so what's important for you to know, if you don't know a lot about AI ethics, this is only being pointed at what people are contributing. So this is not going to the internet to pull off things that might be disinformation. There's sort of a different set of ethics, and AI is much safer when you're pointing it to a specific data set that you've collected on a deliberative platform. For time's sake, I'm going to skip over the thinking behind LLMs and just go to our last slide here, which is what we're working on in our hub is a research agenda. So we're looking at collecting diverse use cases of peace builders, and we're having them write those up this year. So in the next 6 to 8 months, hopefully you'll start seeing our publications coming out of how peace building and civil society groups are using deliberative tech. We've hired a few design facilitators, deliberative experts to help us put together a process design guidance to show where technology can be added to a process. And at the end of the next year, we're going to be building a chatbot so that any of you who are interested in learning more can interact in a really easy way that enables people to answer basic questions about how does this work and take you to some videos that will show you. So let me pass it over to Vic now for a demo. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And really, thank you to all the organizers. This has been a really spectacular day of just really compelling topics and compelling speakers. So thank you so much for including us. Hi, everyone. My name is Vic Stanski. I'm the managing director for Common Good AI. Last year, we established this organization with several really passionate tech founders who really want to see AI used for good. full disclosure, I'm not really a technologist. I don't really identify that way. I'm actually identify more as a humanist. The past 20 years, I've been working in international peace building and humanitarian assistance. I've mostly worked across the Middle East, in Yemen, Egypt, Lebanon, and Syria, as well as Northeast Nigeria and Pakistan. But the work I've been doing over the years is with international organizations to design programming with communities, particularly those who've been affected by conflict, and putting them at the center of this kind of design to deliver assistance, to build peace and social cohesion, whether that's used, with healthcare or shelter or child protection, youth engagement, a whole wide array of programming. But I'm learning that this international experience I have really can translate into this deliberative tech. So Lisa, you mentioned deliberative tech being niche. It's frankly my whole world at the moment. And I'm really passionate about how do we use these new tools to find solutions. So let me just pull up just a couple slides and then I will take it over to the CrowdSmart platform as a demo. But just a little bit more framing in terms of our organization and what we're trying to do. 1 second. Here we go. And just need to move this and share. Oops, like that. Okay. Our mission with Common Good AI is to really foster inclusive civic engagement. We fundamentally want to transform how communities are finding common ground and solving problems together. We often see that it's the loudest voice in the room or whoever has kind of the biggest platform, but really building off of this idea of collective intelligence, we're better able to solve problems if we work together. And so our strategic approach is to use new deliberative tools to transform, particularly how governments and citizens collaborate together at scale. So our primary tool that we use is CrowdSmart, but we use lots of different tools to really help catalyze groups, have them deliberate, talk through several different cycles of engagement to really be able to find a path forward. As I've learned in my international work, that technology can really be enabling within communities. And so we see that there's a huge opportunity here to lift up voices in a respectful and dignified way. Our model is we work with nonprofit organizations who have deep connections, deep roots, and are really into communities in order to be able to leverage all of their great work and really be more inclusive in their approach. We've learned a lot over the past year or so, but I'm also drawing on a lot of my international experience that it was really about the process. The digital tool is kind of one part of a bigger process when you're thinking about using deliberative tech. And frankly, context is everything. And so just drawing on some lessons that we've learned as I explain this flow chart, this is how we design deliberative collaborations. But we first start with a strategic analysis to understand who are we working with, what's the problem that they're trying to address, and what is the level of accessibility to technology. You can't assume that everyone just knows how to use it or everyone is familiar with different tools, especially those that are just emerging. So we really do a deep dive with the nonprofit or the academic or government partner to really understand what are they trying to do and with whom. When we think about the second column here, when we think about designing the digital collaboration, we really need to think through what motivates people to participate in this. And so we've really learned that this motivation question, what's the carrot to have people engage in deliberative collaborations, is central. Otherwise, you won't have anyone engage, right? We also see that digital collaboration is one form of engaging, but also it really can be supplemented with in-person collaboration. By no means are we assuming that you need to replace in-person engagement with digital, but the advantage is you really can be working at scale and being more inclusive. We saw during COVID the use of Zoom in city town hall meetings. And there's been some recent research that documented that there has been greater civic engagement as a result of the use a tool that we use on a regular basis like Zoom. So when we design the digital collaboration, we think through communications, we think about incentives, and we invite people to collaborate as we implement it. The third column is again, thinking about what motivates people towards action, towards participating. It is knowing that their ideas will make a change. And so a central part of our planning when we design a deliberative collaboration is, what is the action that we want to take? Who are the decision makers, and how do we influence them with the insights that have been generated from the community? And oftentimes we will go back and do another collaboration to go deeper with the community, but ultimately we're trying to use the insights, the collective intelligence from the group in order to develop an action plan that would then be able to inform and change and apply the solution that's been identified. And lastly, as Lisa mentioned, this is a very dynamic space. It's constantly evolving. And so we really see that there's a need to be sharing best practice and lessons and knowledge across this space and inviting people to participate. It really needs to be an inclusive process in itself. Just one small case study that we've done just to kind of explain what I've talked about today is we partnered with an organization called Village Media that has over 130 local papers across North America. And within Ontario, Canada, in one of their papers, they printed an article around healthcare access and talked about some of the barriers that exist. And at the very end, we included a CrowdSmart link. And we were so surprised that over 1,500 people clicked on that link and provided very personal responses as to the healthcare access barriers that they very personally were facing or family members were facing. I mean, some really very personal stories around not being able to get to the emergency room and in order to get healthcare right away for people who are facing late stage cancer. And so using CrowdSmart in this large group, we were able to identify what were some of the biggest barriers, and it turns out it was wait times. The wait times for the access to the healthcare was one of the biggest barriers we're facing. And based on the collective intelligence of the group, was really able to uncover that it is tied to the structural insurance and billing policies that were preventing doctors to see patients for multiple issues and not just one. So I just share that as an example, is like it helped uncover and identify new dynamics, and that based on the shared experience from across this community in Ontario, that was then used to inform advocacy with provincial authorities in the region. I turn to just kind of describe a little bit more about CrowdSmart, and then I'll turn to the tool itself. We all have been in workshops where you have many different people, and you want to be able to talk to everyone, and that is incredibly challenging. And so what CrowdSmart is seeking to do and what it does within the tool is it's building lines of communication across and through every person who participates. So you see this diagram here where you can see the lines of communication across 3 people, and as you expand, it becomes infinitely more complex, and so on. And so what CrowdSmart is trying to do is building these lines of communication to identify points of consensus, areas where there's agreement across large groups of people in order to create a knowledge map that is based on Bayesian learning, but it's trying to establish the relationship between different ideas to show where there's alignment across large groups of people. So with that, I'm going to switch my screens for a second to show you CrowdSmart. This is the kind of the landing page. You would receive a link in your emails inviting you to a CrowdSmart engagement. And in this case, this demo is focused on safety on a large boulevard in Brooklyn, New York, which is where I happen to live. And this was a very controversial issue in my neighborhood. So we developed a demo around it. But you see with the landing, page, when you enter the tool, you'll see that there's a bit of an orientation up here of the different tabs, as well as some background information. You can provide videos, PowerPoints, etc., as well as the steps for the collaboration. And you'll see here that we're asking 2 specific questions. So if I click revisit, because I've been through this before, but you'll see that there's a Likert scale where we're asking, how do you perceive traffic safety of McGinnis Boulevard? So we're asking people for their input, and I can move it based on my perceptions. And it's asking me what experiences inform this score. So in this case, I'm going to write the cars drive too fast and it feels risky. I can provide as many answers as I like, but for the sake of time and for this demo, I'll kind of move us forward. When I hit submit and continue, what it's doing is it's compiling all the different answers from all the different participants and putting them and providing this list. And here I have this list of ideas from other people. These are not my ideas. This is really where it's optimized for diversity of thought, where I am interacting with other people's ideas, some that are similar to mine and others that are really different. And again, here we are trying to combat this idea of the loudest person in the room, right? All of these ideas are presented here. You'll notice that there's no identities here, so it really is about the ideas. And also by interacting with other people's ideas, it's really prompting people to slow down their thinking a little bit. It's interacting and thinking about other things that, an answer I didn't necessarily provide. So in this case, I'm looking through the answers here. It talks about poor visibility on the streets, and I'm able to move them over to rank them. I can switch them based on what's most important to me. I don't need to rank all the ideas, only the ones that are really relevant to me. I hit submit and continue. And again, the AI is analyzing how what's important and what's relevant to me. Again, for the sake of time, there's another question, but we won't go through it. There is a tab where you can include demographics. So you can be asking people around age or zip code, et cetera, and it helps then to be able to analyze the data a bit more. There's also a tab where you're looking at idea evolution, and you can sort based on the ideas that I've prioritized or I've not prioritized. So again, there's an opportunity to interact with other ideas that are not my own. I can also sort it on what's most discussed and what's newest. So again, I'm able to kind of go back into the collaboration a couple different times in order to be able to engage. This is hard to do because people are so used to surveys rather than kind of deliberative tools. But we are, again, that's an important part of our kind of communication around expectations and motivating people. You can see here that people can respond to other people's answers and interact with them here on this idea evolution page. The last page is a summary of all the different findings based on everyone's contribution. So you'll see here the first question around safety perceptions and the second question around safety improvements. You'll see the data changed based on findings, but what it's providing is a summary of the top ideas based on everyone's ranking of those ideas. It gives each answer a score, and the 100% means that it's been ranked both as a priority and relevant by the people who've been participating, and so on. It doesn't mean that everyone voted for it, but it is the highest, most, kind of most important and relevant to the group. In addition, if you scroll down, you'll be able to see some data, who's participated, number of ideas, et cetera. You're also able to see additional reports where it shows this graph of what's important on the y-axis and what's most popular on the x-axis. And again, you're able to see the key themes that have been distilled down, as well as people's direct quotes. So there's not this kind of usual AI summarization where you lose kind of ideas. It is really built into the system, as well as seeing this very specific ideas where you can plot out the relationship of these different ideas. This quadrant typically shows what's most important to the group. If you go down to this quadrant, it's going to show you what's less important, what's less relevant, and even what's potentially contentious. And so you can do it further analysis in terms of informing future cycles, future topics, etc. Last thing to show you is, as I said, it summarizes into themes, but there's also this RAG system where you can ask this knowledge model different questions. I'm going to ask it, what is the greatest risks? And it's going to analyze all the data that's been provided. Oops, not enough information. Why do people think this? But you're able then to query the knowledge model in order to understand what's most important to the group here. So now you'll see a summary of the answers, and it also includes the citations from the participants too. So you can again see direct quotes, and that's really important for people to see their own words, right? Instead of it just being summarized into individual themes. So that's CrowdSmart, and would welcome any questions. I recognize we're at time, but maybe we can just take 2 minutes, if that's okay with you, Nick, before we wrap up.
Sure, of course, yes. Any questions from folks in the room? Chip?
Yeah, Vic, I've been playing in this space for millennia, it feels like, and what I like about CrowdSmart is that the barriers to entry are really low. I'm thinking of my sister, who would easily do this. The question I have, and maybe this you can't answer it, is how do you get people to want to be part of these processes in general? Because when I think about my sister who was retired in camp 6 months a year, this would not be something she would say, oh, cool, let's go do CrowdSmart. So how do you, or for some of the people, Solana, you work with Black Men Read, who are essentially illiterate. How you know, this is not a problem with the tech, it's a problem of the society. How do we create someone say, oh, cool, I want to do this? And again, you may not be able to answer that.
Well, we are thinking about it every day because this is the crux of it. I mean, we can have the best tech in the world, but frankly, it doesn't matter unless you really understand what's important to people. And that's why I really spend some time kind of talking about the context and the importance of assessing the context and really building smart engagement strategies. Designing the digital tool and using it is actually a very small part compared to the rest of engaging within the community. A couple lessons that we've learned just really fast is that always thinking about what's the hook. What will really motivate people to engage people? Is it informing a bigger policy discussion? Is it informing a budget? Is it, informing the next community, city planning session? You really have to have like a bigger thing that this is informing. The second lesson is that people really want to know that their ideas are going to make a difference. And so it isn't really the incentives there is that you want to be communicating early on and regularly about where the information is going and how it's going to be informing decision makers. And then lastly, the other big lesson is about the importance of building trust. And this is where we think, in our design, really being thoughtful about what's the action that we're going to take from this. Because again, people want to know that their ideas, their time, it's worth it to them. And so this really full circle back to the context, the value and the importance of understanding the context and what motivates different groups, because there's never going to be one thing, is really instrumental to making this successful. Any other questions?
Any other questions? I saw some back and forth in the chat. Lena was asking Vic if there would be a possibility to turn this into voice rather than text, at least on the input level. Omar was asking, is the knowledge model generated from the deliberation exportable in some way? And then we had kind of a comment / general or question or more comment on there's a trade-off, right? Like with these deliberation platforms, there are free and easy to use ones. There's, Facebook, Google Forms, increasingly Slack. On the other end, there are seemingly bespoke processes and platforms like CrowdSmart, for instance. It seems to me like we're still in the bespoke era right now. I'm hoping we get to a point where we don't need bespoke solutions to solve problems in communities, and there might be a common platform where people can people can use and trust in various different scenarios. Yeah.
And
Lisa, this is your territory.
let me just jump in there because there are a couple of initiatives right now to build co-ops, at least one co-op that would be for a bunch of different platforms, and a team of tech staff who would be able to help civil society and cities and countries use these tools. And many of them the tools can be stacked too. So like Lena wants to do voice, Talk to the City is a deliberative platform that uses just WhatsApp and voice. So there's a way of stacking these together to have a really rich process. And we recognize in the last couple years of research on this, it takes a lot for civil society to make the jump to do this, and they need tech support to be able to do it. So we're trying to build that this year. And again, we're also, sort of doing proof of concept. Polis, I put a link in the chat to Polis so you can participate on a different platform. Very easy to use. You can see exactly, it doesn't take a lot of tech literacy to get onto any of these platforms. But Polis, the algorithm is being used on Facebook and X, that bridging algorithm that they use. Unfortunately, there's a lot of other things about X and Facebook that are still quite destructive and harmful. But the idea that the big tech companies are watching this space, definitely. They're looking at it, they're thinking about it. So again, hopefully we're going to have a Facebook dialogues section that's going to have a different algorithm and look in the future. Thanks so much, everyone. Alliance for Peace Building, Council on Tech and Social Cohesion folks. This was a great day, really inspiring to see everyone's presentations.